Hello. My name is Rachel Cargle. I'm a public academic, activist, writer, and lecturer, and I am very happy to be here tonight. I won't take up too much of your time this evening. Tonight, I invite you to join me in community and conversation about the state of our existence in America. This talk is going to come to you in 3 distinct parts. First, we will honor and acknowledge the lives lost in the last several days that have reignited the revolutionary action we are not backing down from. We will unpack the dynamics at play. Both the actions of the oppressor and the oppressed will be discussed to offer clarity and unwhitewashed lens into what we are experiencing. Lastly, we will talk about the work ahead. There is so much to be done, and I hope that you will join me and the hundreds of thousands of Black people who are demanding our justice, our freedom, and our liberation from the hands of the white supremacist police state of the United States of America. I cannot move forward without speaking directly to the Black community who has joined us here tonight. Black America, I see you. You are seen, heard, and affirmed in your anger, in your sadness, in your rage, in your fear, and in your deepest desires to have the ease, rest, and safety that you are deserving of as human beings. Within the last several weeks, we have had to hashtag the names of far too many Black lives who were taken away from us due to the clinging grip of white supremacy. But this is nothing new for the United States of America, a country that was founded on the principles of enslavement and settler colonialism, displacement, and murder. A country who has made it clear that their commitment to freedom does not apply to all. This conversation also cannot begin without addressing the ways that racism is not just a symptom of American life. No, it is a value of whiteness that was braided into the fabric of what the American revolutionaries built. What we have seen over the last several weeks has been yet another launching point for critical conversation about racism in the U.S. And with the powerful and bold action of those on the ground, conversations have led to uprisings and protests. Our cries for justice and for change, a relentless reminder that we will not be silenced while the police continue to enact violence on Black people from coast to coast. So what is revolution? It is defined as an overthrow of social order in favor of a new system. Throughout history, uprisings and revolutions have been seen and celebrated in various societies. The Haitian Revolution, Watts Rebellion, the 1992 Rodney King riots. I hope that you take the time to read into each of these instances of organizing and powerful resistance to develop an inspiration for being part of the revolution that we are heading toward today. Revolutions are responses from communities of distress. It is the manifestation of fear, anger, and the unacceptance that no longer is able to be held in the bodies of those who are seeking freedom and liberation. Our whitewashed history books, our racist institutions and industrial complexes, and our curated media have portrayed a very particular lens of who gets to have a revolution and who does not, who gets to make demands for their justice and who does not, of who gets to live and who does not. It is imperative that we look critically into the language used to describe what happens when people are demanding their rights and the differences in how Black freedom movements and white demands for civility are depicted. On April 16th, large groups of white men armed with rifles were peacefully allowed access into the Michigan State Capitol with their demand to not have to deal with the oppression of COVID-19 public health measures of social distancing and stay-at-home orders. Your president addressed this with the words, quote, "The governor should give a little and put out the fire. These are very good people, but they are angry. They want their lives back again, safely. See them. Talk to them. Make them a deal. End quote. Earlier this week, on May 26th, as protesters were attacked with tear gas and rubber bullets at the hands of the National Guard in response to their uprising and protests against the police murder of George Floyd, your president said this. Quote, "Those thugs are dishonoring the memory of George Floyd, and I won't let it happen. Just spoke to Governor Tim Walz and told him that the military is fine, that the military is with him all the way. Any difficulty and we will assume control, but when the looting starts, the shooting starts." End quote. This nauseating tactic of collective gaslighting of the Black community is not new. White America has always had to find a way to justify the way it treats Black bodies again and again. White supremacy itself is simply a myth constructed out of the desperate need that white people have to justify their vicious, violent, and dehumanizing actions toward colonized peoples over history and today. Things like the harmful concepts of biological inferiority, historically taught in American medical colleges, that led to Black bodies being experimented on for gynecological innovation. Things like natural order and manifest destiny, these delusional ideas that whiteness exists as a moral compass, as the norm, as the default of humanity, while everything else is the other. We also see manifestations of this within the concept of white saviorism that constantly shows up in industries like adoption, education, and philanthropy. These ideas and concepts are the foundation of American thought and the American conscience. What is happening today, what we are seeing in these brutal murders by the American police force, what we are seeing in the attempted murders by white women who call the police as their customer service line to remove the Black people they don't want to have to deal with, these are all manifestations of the same things this country has exhibited in ways both old and new, generation after generation. We have holidays that celebrate the courageous acts of American Revolutionary War heroes. Yet when the word revolution comes out of a Black mouth, it is taken in offense and met with confusion about how we could possibly suggest anything other than to march quietly, to protest peacefully. That is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. called negative peace, which is simply the absence of tension, versus a positive peace, which is the presence of justice. What is peace when the only people who get to rest in it are those with white skin? Simply another manifestation of the white supremacy begging for its comfort, even at the cost of seeing fellow Americans murdered again and again. This is a collective form of gaslighting. The ways that the American government, held up by the passiveness and complacency of the various demographics of the American people who benefit, maintain the comfort of white supremacy, and this must be disrupted. I must be clear here. The call for revolution is in no way a call for switching of places with whiteness. It is not a desire to match the morals that white supremacy has projected. It is not a desire to oppress or to dominate. The call for the Black revolution is one of being able to stay alive and to be well. Being able to have our human rights respected, being able to exist in the world without the weight of white supremacy having such heaviness that we can barely maneuver without fear or frustration. Our revolution is one of liberation, one of community value, one of Black joy, of Black ease, of Black lives mattering. How will you show up in this time of human history? How will you tell the story to your grandchildren about what action you took during the civil unrest that happened in the year 2020? How will you show up not just as an ally, but as an accomplice to upend the systems that are quite frankly killing us all? There are several ways to be a part of the solution. Everyone has capabilities that must be put into action immediately. There are educators, They're organizers. They're activists. They're mobilizers. They're fundraisers. They're artists. There are those who redistribute the resources they have to the people who need it most. There is you. There is you. There is you. I teach from a framework I developed: critical knowledge plus radical empathy plus intentional action. I suggest that you tap into each part of this equation to give yourself a more grounded approach to being involved in the revolutionary change we are seeking today. By critical knowledge, I mean taking the time to seek out and pull from credible sources to get a real understanding of what is happening and what it stems from. Too often in this country, the voices of the marginalized are spoken for at the hands of white academics, white journalists, and white media outlets. The Black community has a deeply dedicated community of writers, artists, and creatives sharing our story. Take time to seek them out and hear them and affirm their realities. The next aspect is radical empathy. This moves past the passive empathy that we are often taught that usually ends when we utter the words, "I feel you." This is an empathy that moves past just having the ability to understand or share the experiences of others. It is a radical empathy that calls you to hold yourself accountable for how you play into the pain of others. This is a critical aspect of the equation that you cannot ignore. Lastly, intentional action. Tonight, I'm going to offer action steps you can take right now to make a difference. We all exist with various levels of access, privilege, platform, ability, and the like. I encourage you to glean from those suggestions in every possible way you are personally able to take action. And then hold your communities accountable for doing the same. It is not enough to feel sad. It is not enough to be shocked. It is not enough to wonder how this could have happened again. Indeed, it is offensive for you to approach the Black community and say, "I had no idea." It's offensive for anyone to disregard the blatant ways that Black lives are being murdered and discarded across the country. With this public address, I've developed a syllabus of sorts that will guide you through applying the knowledge, empathy, and action framework I suggested. But I'd like to touch on 3 actionable things that you can do right now. Take time tonight to research which civil rights and social justice organizations in your local community are doing the work. Grassroots organizations are often on the front lines of doing this work on small and large scales. We must use our resources to support these people who have trained and made it their lives' work to fight for justice. Next, work to understand the value of calling for the defunding of your local police departments and instead pushing those resources to be redistributed into community organizations. Local and state governments have continued to divest from our people and our communities while they streamline resources to the militarized state police. The police tout solidarity with each other in regard to all things except the ways their uniformed brothers are murdering Black bodies. These are ways that we can hold these systems, comprised of just people, accountable for how they are betraying their duty to serve and protect. Next, for those who are part of companies and organizations, large and small, I implore you to hold your employers and your establishments accountable. If they are benefiting from Black dollars but not intentional about protecting Black lives, we must say no more. There is no room for being passive in the name of capitalism. This includes the academic sector, the fashion industry, the music industry, the nonprofit sector, and so on. We must demand people over property, people over products, people over profit. I often remind my readers that anti-racism work is not self-improvement work for the white community. This work does not end after white people feel better about what they did. This work ends only when Black people have justice in every vein that white supremacy has found to oppress. This includes everything from disproportionate maternal mortality to the preschool to prison pipeline, to the adultification of our Black children, to housing discrimination, to voter suppression, to the prison industrial complex, to police brutality. My hope is that this address offers you critical language and a critical lens through which you can show up. Action must be taken now. Accountability must be had now. Change must be made now. There are lives depending on it. Thank you for being here. In the links provided, you will find a few things. First, I have developed a social syllabus that offers resources that speak to what I've mentioned here tonight and that will guide you through learning more. This will include organizations I suggest donating to, my Revolution book list, and my Revolution playlist as well. If you value learning from my work, I invite you to join me over at The Great Unlearn. I developed this online learning platform as a monthly self-priced and self-paced opportunity to dive into the things that our traditional American education often failed us on. Topics include things like the history of race and unlearning the American birth story. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all. I don't take this community for granted. We are not backing down. Every one of us must show up. Solidarity is the only way. Revolution now.